Matthew 5, verse 16, that one verse reading from the Message Bible. This is what Jesus says to his disciples. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine, keep open house, be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up to God, this generous Father in heaven. I want you to turn to your neighbor and say to them as loudly and as safely as you can, I was made for this. Got a neighbor on the other side, shout to them, I was made for this. Amen. You may be seated in the Lord's presence. The discourse of Matthew 5 does not end until you arrive at Matthew chapter 7. It is the longest discourse recorded in the entire Bible from Jesus himself. Sometimes when I go back and review our recordings, I'll say to, y'all don't say this, I say this to myself. I say, thought you went long today. That's what I say to myself sometimes. Y'all go home and y'all be saying, Pastor, I wish you would have went a little longer. Amen. Amen. That's why y'all know when it's amen, y'all. But never have I been so long that I started in chapter 5 and did not end until chapter 7. Jesus here in this discourse that we refer to as the Sermon on the Mount starts in Matthew 5 and does not finish until he reaches Matthew 7. He sets up this discourse in verse 1 and the first statement in verse 2. Verse 1 says, when Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed, climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. Now, these two verses, or one verse and a piece, prove to us that this was a hybrid crowd. It was not a monolithic crowd. It was a hybrid crowd. That is, there were different kinds of people in this single crowd. The first type of person that was in this crowd, they were curious people. Curious people. The ministry of Jesus had grown, and there were those who were curious about him, so they started following him. The curious were in this crowd. But then not only do I believe that there were some curious folks in the crowd, I believe there were some captive folks in the crowd. Some folks who didn't necessarily want to be there, but their mama was there. They didn't necessarily sign up for church that day, but their daddy was there, and wherever daddy was, that's where they had to be. Let me put it another way. There were some folks in this crowd with a drug problem. Their mama, their granddaddy, their grandfather, their grandmother drugged them to church. And I'll be honest, a lot of my church years, I suffered from a drug problem. When it was church time, there was no question in the Thought household on whether or not you were going to church. Wasn't nobody coming to your room to ask you, are you going to church today? The only question was, is you breathing? And if you are breathing, when the car goes to church, you better be in the car. There were the curious in this crowd. Then there were the captive in this crowd. But then there was a third group of people, and they were the committed. The Bible refers to them as Jesus's apprentices in the Message Bible. In the King James Version, they are referred to as his disciples. And what Jesus does in the verses that remain, he proves that for every committed Christian disciple, there are some things you have been made for. He gives us the first one right there in verse 2 down through verse number 12. Jesus says, if you are a committed Christian disciple, you have been made to never burn out. Oh, somebody saying, bro, pastor, I must be in trouble with God because I feel burnt out right now. Is that a word? Right now. If I were being proper, I would say, Pastor, I feel burnt out right now. But when you feel burnt out, you say it like you feel it. I feel like I'm burnt out right now. Now notice, I did not say that every committed Christian disciple will never feel like you're burned out. But what I did say is for every committed Christian disciple, you have been made to never burn out. He proves it to us right here in the text. This bothers me, Kaya. This bothers me. This 46, almost 47-year-old version of myself bothers me. Because I was brought up, Bradan, in church my whole life and taught that if you love God, live for God, you will have bright, sunshiny days. I was told that you could praise your way through, you could press your way through, you could pray your way through. But what somebody forgot to tell me is that I had to go through. And I thought that the Christian life had such an element of joy and tranquility in it until I was blindsided when trouble kept showing up at my address. I read normally one book per week. Last week I finished the book by Reverend Dr. Phileron Wright. The book is entitled Night Riders. It is his autobiography, and he speaks a lot about his parents. I'm reading a new book, a rather short book by Avery Lee and Reverend Dr. Gardner Calvin Taylor. And I was reading last night before bed, and they reminded me of a passage in the New Testament where Paul spoke to Timothy and said to Timothy that he should endure hardness as a good soldier. And I've been reading that for years. But then it dawned on me that in order to live it, you got to go through some stuff. And this text proves in verse 2 through verse 12 that even though you feel burned out at times, for the committed Christian disciple, you have been made to never burn out. Watch what you find in verse 2. And taught his climbing companions, this is what he said: you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and his rule. I stopped right there. I said, at the end, I'm blessed when I'm at the end of my rope. In order to be at the end of your rope means you got to get to the end of your rope. That means you're holding on. You feel like you are about to let go, and just at the end of the rope, God shows up. But he doesn't show up all the time at the top of the rope. He shows up at the end of the rope. And somebody, you are about to fall apart because you feel like you are at the end of the rope. The text says it is only when you get to the end of the rope that God shows up. You wondering why he's not there yet? It's because you ain't there yet. When you get where you are supposed to be, he will get where he is supposed to be. So again, verse 3, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule. I said, all right, Jesus. Then he gave me verse 4. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. Let that thing sink in. When you think you have lost the person closest to you, you are blessed because you find the person who really is closest to you. Hey, can I tell you something about the people closest to you? If they knew everything there was to know about you, y'all wouldn't be that close. Y'all didn't come down to church. Whomever the person is in your life that you see as the person closest to you, if they knew everything there was to know about you, y'all wouldn't be that close. The Lord, on the other hand, knows everything there is to know about us and still loves us. The Lord knows when we have the unmitigated gall to ask him to forgive us for what we are about to do. Lord, I know I ain't got no business doing this, but be with me, Jesus. Lord, I know I don't have any business here, but be with me, Jesus. I had a cousin who said she knew she was in trouble when she was sitting in a club and bowed her head to pray over her drink. God knows all there is to know about us, and he still loves us. So verse 4 says, you're blessed when you feel you've lost what's most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. Then here comes in verse 5. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. When you learn how to be content with what you have. So what your driver's side window won't roll down? You don't need to be at the drive-thru that often, no. Pastor, I'm so ashamed. Every time I pull up to McDonald's, I have to open the whole door because the window won't go down. Go in. Park the car and go in. The exercise will do you some good. Perhaps you will burn off what you're about to go get on the way in. Then he gives us verse 6. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink in the best meal you'll ever eat. King James Version says, you are blessed when you hunger and thirst after righteousness. Verse 7, you're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful or filled with care, you find yourselves cared for. Verse 8, you're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. When you get this together. Some of us are so busy, not none of y'all in here, some of y'all cousins, are so busy trying to fix other people until you're not taking any time to work on your God fix me. You got a whole list right now. A whole list of problems you have with somebody you don't like that much. You got a whole list. And you don't have a sticky note about yourself. Whole list about them, not even a paragraph about yourself. Let's talk about some of the stuff that need to be on your list. Laziness. Procrastinator. Envious. Gluttonous. Filled with pride. Walk in your flesh instead of the spirit. Want everything your eyes see, even when your bank account says you shouldn't have. Got a whole list for the world and nothing for yourself. Whole list for your ex. I knew I'd get you after a while. Nothing about you. Say, but Pastor, I'm perfect. That's the reason they my ex. When the real truth is, part of the reason they're your ex is because they ex too. And then you run into their next.
Watch out.
They're your ex, and then you run into their next. And then you say stuff like this. Now look at them and look at me. That's what your ex did. Y'all didn't come ready for church. Y'all didn't come ready for church. And the Lord says, don't get bent out of shape just because that's their next. Because if it ain't meant to be, they next will become another ex. Have mercy, somebody. So he says in verse 8, you're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. Verse 9, you're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. King James Version calls it peacemakers. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. Instead of instigating stuff, you ought to be putting things back together. Verse 9, you're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me, God says. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they are uncomfortable. Verse 12, you can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even. For though they don't like it, I do. And all heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. So he proves in verse 1 all the way through verse 12 to every committed Christian disciple, you have been made to never burn out. You know, that's not all he proves. He not only teaches us that we've been made never to burn out, he also teaches us that we've been made never to blend in. Romans 12 and verse 2 says that we are not to be conformed to this world, but we are to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. God didn't put you here to blend in. He teaches it in verse 13 through verse 15. He says, let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as on a city, or as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. God didn't put you here to blend in. People still need to see God, and the only way they're going to see God is to see God in people. We used to be able to distinguish between church folks and the world. Okay, let me find my old school saints. We used to be able to tell the difference between the devil's music, God's music. I was headed home this past week from Jacksonville, and I had been listening to news radio and decided I wanted to hear something uplifting. And switched over to the gospel channel and had to turn it off so fast because I didn't want the people riding by me to think that I was riding dirty. I still don't know what the song was. I couldn't get past all the foolishness in the song. The world still needs to see God in us so they can get to know Him for themselves. If you are a committed Christian disciple, God made you to never burn out. God made you to never blend in. But then finally, God made you to always show out. Now I know the world says to Christians, you shouldn't be showing. You better read your Bible. God didn't create you to be mediocre. God did not create you to receive His blessings and then behave as though you do not have His blessings. God showed out when He made you, so you ought to show out like you've been made by God. I'm in the Bible. It's in verse 16. He says, now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand. Here's what he says: shine, keep open house, be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. God says, shine. I put you on a hill to shine. Show out. Let the God in you shine so brightly until people see enough of Him until they desire to know Him for themselves. Shine. Everywhere you go, shine. Get you some of them big old lashes. Do like Tebow did. Put John on one side, 360. At some point in the very near future, when you go into your local McDonald's or Burger King, they're going to have a hairnet that goes all the way under the eyes. Shine. Shine. Walk in it. Walk in the glory. Walk in the revelation that God has given you. Why? Let me give you several reasons, and I'm done. Here's the first one. You know, the first reason you ought to shine is because there's light in you. There's light in you. Bursting to get outside. Shine. Get out of the place where your relationship with God causes you to feel timid or inferior. The opposite is the truth. If God is in you, his light is in you, and you need to let your light shine. Some of us are not shining. See, when you shine, people know you're in the room for the right reason. The others of us, we get in the room and they know we in there for a reason too. Just ain't the right reason. The Lord wants you to shine. What you've been doing is stinking. You don't light up the place, you stink up. When people see you coming, they ought to say, here she comes. Doesn't matter how bad her day is, something is shining on the inside of her that she just can't turn off. Here she comes. Here he comes. It doesn't matter how many of his hours get cut. There is something in him that keeps on shining. Here he comes with the shining self. Well, he can't help but shine because there's light in him. She can't help but shine because there's light in her. But then they see some other folks and say, here they go. They can smell your attitude before they see your face. And they start bracing themselves because they don't know what version of you they're going to get. Is it your Sunday morning church version or your Sunday afternoon? Get it, don't stop. Shine. The reason you ought to shine is because there is light in you. Let me give you the second reason you ought to shine. Not only because there is light in you, but because there is darkness in the world. There is darkness in the world. What is it that causes this level of darkness in the world? Another word for darkness is emptiness. Emptiness. And you know the emptiest people in the world are people who are the opposite of what God has created us to be. God never made us to blend in with the world. Neither did he make us to be burned out with the world. And what makes people empty is the fact that they are burned out from trying to blend in. Think about the meanest people on your job, burned out, trying to blend in. And God wants you to walk in with your satisfied self. Don't have all you want, but you sure got all you need. May not be able to eat steak and turkey with all the trimmings, but if you got bread on your table, that's all you need. May not be able to drink the finest of beverages, but if your hydrant is still pumping water, that's all you need. You may not be able to put on no silk or wear no satin, but if every now and then the twins will get together, Polly and Esther, that's all you need. And they're wondering, they're so busy trying to get above someone else, trying to reach a next level that God is not in. That's one thing you got to be careful about with promotion. If God is on the level you are on, make sure the level you're trying to go to, he's there too. Because I don't want a promotion if it's going to put me in a place where God is not. God wants you to shine because there's light in you. God wants you to shine because there is darkness in the world. But finally, God wants you to shine because you are the only hope the world has. Nobody comes to Jesus without coming through someone else. We see Jesus in people, and seeing Jesus in people draws us to Jesus himself. That's the language of verse 16. Now that I've put you on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. Somebody needs to see the Jesus in you so they can get to know Jesus for themselves. And the only way they're going to see Jesus in you is if you start shining. And you ought to shine because there's light in you. In Acts chapter 2, some Jews saw Jesus in the disciples, and 3,000 souls got saved at the same time. In Acts chapter 8, an Ethiopian eunuch saw Jesus in Philip and got saved on the side of the road. In Acts chapter 16, an Ethiopian jailer saw Jesus in Paul and Silas and got to know Jesus for himself. One day I saw Jesus in my mama, and I got to know Jesus for myself. One day my next oldest brother saw enough Jesus in me until he wanted to know the Jesus that I knew. Who is seeing Jesus in your life? God gave you a light. Let your light shine, because the world is in darkness, and the only way they're going to see the light is when they see our light. And all the people say, amen.